Loud. All right, and away we go. Happy Tuesday, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to the Kansas City User Group virtual on June 29th. That is today. I actually did not update that slide until this morning. It still said April 22nd, so I was proud of myself for catching that. But welcome. If you've been here many times, if you're here for the first time, if you're here anywhere in between on the spectrum, we absolutely welcome you. My name is Dale Ziegler. By day, I am a senior business analyst with Seven Summits, which is a consulting company. I forgot. I know they changed the partner tiering system, but we are pretty high up in the Salesforce partner space, and then recently acquired by IBM. So I need to update that to say Seven Summits, an IBM company. And then with me is my partner in crime, Jeff Berger. Jeff, you want to go ahead and say hi?
Hello, hello, hello. I'm Jeff Berger. I am the Director of Salesforce Operations here at Dickinson Financial Corporation, aka Academy Bank, aka Armed Forces Bank here in Kansas City. I am very excited to be here. It's been a little bit since I've been able to engage, so thanks to Dale for keeping things going, and looking forward to chat with everybody today.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. If you need to reach out to either of us, you can get us at this Kansas City US user at Trailblazer CGL email address. It goes to both of us. We're both as quickly responsive as we can be. It is another inbox, kind of separate from everything else that we're doing, but we're on it pretty much every day. So if you have a question, if you have a thought, if you have anything, please do not hesitate to shoot us an email there and we'll get back to you. We are recording this meeting because, sometimes people want to go back and see content again or whatever. But with that, if you are not comfortable, if you're not permitted to be recorded, please drop now. We will post the link to the recording on our YouTube channel either later today or tomorrow. It'll be within the next couple of days, and we'll also share out the deck and any other materials that contain links, anything like that. So you're not missing anything if you're not here with us live. But again, if you can't be recorded or don't want to be recorded, then unfortunately we need you to drop now, please. And then, of course, Zoom etiquette. If you are not speaking, please just mute yourself. We want to try and keep as clear of a line as possible from an audio perspective. And then also, we've had this happen a few times on meetings, and it's kind of funny to see some of the names. But because this is part of a professional networking organization, we just ask that if you've let your kids take over your Zoom with their gamer handles or anything, that's awesome. I have kids too. They would do the same thing. But please just update your name to your real name so that we know who we're actually interacting with. And thank you to our sponsor, DataGroomr, Steve Steve Poe. He told me I could call him Steve Poe. I'm not going to try. Steve, I tried. I'm sorry. Steve will be presenting here in about half an hour on the DataGroomr product and some best practices in their space. So we are thankful to have Steve and Kellyanne on the call with us. For those of you who opted in during the registration, we will be raffling off a couple of gift cards. So we'll do the drawing after the meeting. And if you're a lucky winner, we'll get you connected with Kellyanne afterwards. So thank you to Steve and Kellyanne. Thank you to DataGroomr. So if you've been with our group before, this is when we normally jump into all of the introductory items and celebrations and upcoming webinars and everything. But we put out a survey a couple of weeks ago that feels like it's something that we should probably address sooner than later, just so that everybody knows where things are. And of course, it's the hot topic in a COVID world, returning to in-person meetings. I did have a couple of people reach out to me in the last week or two, excited about still coming to user group meetings virtually, but really getting excited about the concept of in-person meetings. And I think we all knew that, the day was coming. Some of you have already returned to the office. Some of you are still working from home. Some of you may be in a hybrid, whatever. We're all in different places. We then expanded out to kids' schools, and some did entirely remote learning, some did in person, some did hybrid. Everybody's in very different places with very different mindsets, very different unique situations. And these kinds of meetings, no different, but they do take some consideration. So the results of that survey, of the 50 results that we received, are overwhelmingly, most of you are ready to return to in-person meetings. We only had 3 say that they weren't in the area. I did want to at least call that out, because virtually we have been able to expand regionally and across the country and even around the world. I love that we've had attendees come from the Netherlands and India and Spain. It's great that virtual has allowed us to open this up to more than just local groups. Jeff and I, as user group leaders, we love being able to cast our net wide. Obviously, we love facilitating a space for those of us locally here in Kansas City, and maybe further west in Kansas, or further east in Missouri, or up into Nebraska and Iowa. But we have loved that virtual has made that possible, and other user group leaders have said that as well. But we are a local group. We do need to listen to those of you who are our local members here. So again, basically a 2-to-1 ratio of being ready to meet in person. We then also put a follow-up question on that regard. If you said yes or not yet, would there be any limitations or any considerations that you would want us to take to either make you feel comfortable to be in person, or any additional feedback that you possibly had? So right off the top, we had someone coming in saying, no limitations, I'm fully vaccinated. I get that. I'm fully vaccinated as well. I don't know about Jeff. I don't know about Jeff. I don't know about the rest of you. We're all in different places with it, but I get that. I get it. Limitations would be pre-packaged lunch options, spacing between seats, sanitizing stations, and of course, looking forward to see everyone in person again. I think we're all looking forward to getting closer and closer to some semblance of normalcy and being able to socialize. We'll touch on the rest of that statement here in a couple of slides in terms of like the sanitizing stations and how do we appropriately distance, if social distance is still the correct term, or whatever that looks like, but we'll touch on that here in a little bit. Nope, just lots of pizza and Coke. I thought about not putting this on here because I'll be honest, I was a little frustrated at who put that there. Yes, that's definitely a draw for in-person meetings, is that we serve lunch. I would hope people aren't coming just for a free lunch. I would hope that the time and energy that we put into this is for you to grow in your Salesforce journey, for our sponsors who end up paying for that lunch, that they're potentially able to grow their business, that we're all able to win. But I get it, free food is free food. It was a little frustrating to put that on there. Encouraging masks or attending virtually if not yet vaccinated. Obviously, the easiest thing to do would be to encourage wearing masks. That would be the simplest piece out of the logistics that would go into an in-person meeting. Attending virtually if not yet vaccinated, we're going to touch on that here in a few slides. No limitations. Context of that could be taken in a number of different ways. Again, I'd put that with no, I'm fully vaccinated. There's a number of ways to interpret that and have us try to figure out what that looks like for the rest of the group. Offer virtual options so that everyone can be comfortable attending, when we'll also likely keep attendance numbers lower for distancing purposes. Mathematically speaking, spot on. If there was a second option of virtual, then yeah, that might reduce the numbers of people in person, which could make spacing a lot easier. Again, we'll touch on that here in a minute. We have 2 slides worth of additional feedback from people who said not yet. Healthy people have different immune systems. Absolutely. We're all different people, whether you're vaccinated, whether you're not vaccinated, whether you're somewhere in between, whether you're immunocompromised. I'm going to go ahead and mute whoever is not muted. But let's see. All right. Yeah. Everybody has different immune systems, and that's just something to take into consideration as we think about how can we get people together and if it's the right decision. Vaccination requirements, that's a big one I'm tabling for the next couple of slides. I won't be ready to meet in person until there are vaccines available for my entire family, including those under 12. Unless you could arrange an outdoor meeting with social distancing, that I would consider it. I have 3 boys, 2 of which are under 12. One is 15 tomorrow, actually, and he just got his 2nd vaccination a couple of weeks ago. But those 2 under 12, yeah, mine aren't vaccinated either. And I'll be honest when I say, even though my wife and my oldest and I are all double vaccinated, if we have to go into a place where they have to wear masks, we as a family stand united. We all wear our masks together because they can't get vaccinated yet. It's not approved. It hasn't been fully tested. They're still going through that. And that's unfortunate for those kids, those ages. And everybody feels differently about it. I just want to put that out there, but everybody, especially with kids, is approaching this in completely different ways. This one just amused me. Can't leave work for 3 hours plus driving to BFE, Kansas. I get the 3 hours because it is a long meeting, but Overland Park I didn't think was BFE. So I don't know who put that. This was an anonymous survey. I needed to have a little chuckle at this. And this came from the not yet feedback. This wasn't somebody who lived somewhere else in the country. This was someone who said, I'm not yet ready to return. So I felt it was fair feedback in there. We need a little comic relief in all of this.
Well, I think in there, you know, Dale, there's a kernel of truth, right? You and I have talked a lot before about where the right place is for these in-person things, right? The Kansas City geo is pretty vast, right? And asking somebody, say, from the Northland to drive down to Overland Park or vice versa is a challenge. And so I think one of the things that's come out of the virtual events is folks who, you know, maybe had attended in the past when we had something that was a little more central at American Century, but maybe had fallen away from the group when we moved things further south, we're able to start attending again. And I think that's something we need to think about when we think about virtual versus in person. That location can be limiting for some folks.
Absolutely. We did administer a survey a couple of years ago just to figure out where people live and work. And we very luckily landed on Overland Park because I think right around 50% of the group both lived and worked in Johnson County and kind of like specifically in Overland Park. And we were able to find Mazuma as a free space, and it kind of just all came together. That doesn't mean that that's still an accurate data set today. I want to say that was 2017. Yeah, 4 years later, absolutely may have had shifts. So I just want to say, if you want BFE, I live at 159th and Ridgeview in Olathe. That is BFE. Overland Park's a little bit more central, but whatever. Moving on. I wouldn't mind in person like twice a year, but just prefer the virtual meetings. You know, again, that's something for us to sort through, and you know, in person maybe more is more of a social gathering rather than a meeting, or maybe it is a meeting, but definitely fair input there. And preferring the virtual meetings. I think a big thing that the last 18 months or so has taught us is if we've had to work from home, it does create some complications, but it's also opened up a fair number of conveniences. Again, going to the previous point of having to leave work for 3 hours, you don't have to drive to a Zoom meeting. So that maybe does become more of a convenience that became a preference, but everybody is in completely different places with that. This one I thought was very poignant and I left unedited. There we as humans are all given free choice to do what we want with information that's given to us. If you're not obligated to do something, everybody asks themselves, then do I really need to do it? Just going to leave that one right there, because again, I felt it was very, very poignant on why someone might not be ready to return to in-person. Going back to just the timing of things, virtual is great, even if just for those who can't take full time away from the office. Confirm require vaccination of attendees. So we're going to touch on this one here on the next slide, and I think that was the final bullet point. So logistical items to consider. So there's a whole lot of policies. There's a whole lot of things. There's a whole lot of laws. Salesforce policies. So there's probably a lot that's not known about what goes into user groups. For one, Jeff and I, as co-leaders, Brian Hadaway in the dev space, when we had our nonprofit and our WIT groups and all those others, we as the leaders have to actually sign a contract with Salesforce that says we will abide by their rules, their methods. I mean, it's a pretty high level thing. They don't micromanage us at all, but there are certain things that, because we are officially representing Salesforce, we have to be mindful of, which now in a pandemic world, Salesforce has instituted a number of policies for its employees and its official operations that do limit and govern the ability to actually congregate in person. It's a big reason why no events. It's kind of why Dreamforce is a little bit of a trial event this year and by invite only. But Jeff and I have that not hanging over us, but governing what we do, because if something were to happen at an event that we host, we have to answer to Salesforce. Site availability. A lot of places aren't necessarily, like meeting places aren't fully opening up to public meetings. Mazuma, for example, and I would defer to Jeff to talk about the banking industry at a higher level, but that conference room that we were meeting in at Mazuma, it was for free, but banks largely closed their lobbies and any gathering areas and are still slowly reopening. That was a very convenient site, but it may not even be available. We don't know if they're going to say, if you meet, you have to follow XYZ policies, anything like that. Those are things that would need to be researched. Sponsor willingness. I don't necessarily want to put Steve on the spot if he's not comfortable speaking, but like for me at 7 Summits, we instituted a policy at the start of the pandemic that 100% suspended travel, period. No reason to have to travel. And there's 4 of us here in Kansas City. We aren't even allowed to officially meet for meetings or meet with our local clients. I have a client that lives 5 miles south of me. I cannot take him to lunch or coffee, have a working session or anything, because the sponsors have instituted travel policies that are all over the place. Some of them are opening up, but they involve not paying for people to congregate. That is something that we definitely would need to navigate. Site adequacy, that kind of goes along with site availability, but site adequacy may still be governed under county laws or particular city laws, and quite frankly, the owners or leasers of the actual space and what rules they implement in terms of masking, not masking, distancing, encouraging some to attend and not others, whatever that may be. Wi-Fi and streaming capabilities. Would love to have an outdoor meeting. I don't think we could find enough hotspots to power how many of us would be trying to get online, host a meeting on Zoom, make it available to people who can't attend. Definitely couldn't present. I'm pretty sure nobody, the presenter doesn't want to say, okay, and on this slide, A, B, C, D, E. Okay, pass it around the circle. That makes that a little bit more complicated when we are a technical meeting group. Again, outside would be the best option, but that does limit us in actual presentation capabilities. And then finally, ethical and legal considerations. And this has been a huge topic amongst nationally and internationally, but nationally is the best that we can really put our hands on because every country is different. The ethics and legality of requiring masks, requiring proof of vaccination. You, as a resident of Johnson County or a resident of Missouri, may have rights given to you that say you don't have to wear a mask. If your county mandate, if a state overriding mandate, if any of those have been lifted, as soon as you go to a different place, a different jurisdiction, and you go into a building, you are then governed by the building. It is illegal to ask someone for proof of vaccination. We are on the honor system. We're all on it. We don't have to show our proof. We also can't be asked for our proof. I put in ethical, I said ethical and legal because it started with my wife as a therapist, so she's in the HIPAA space. You're absolutely protected by HIPAA with your proof of vaccination. That is yours, that is your PHI, that is personal to you. And there have to be some incredibly extreme circumstances to require you to show that proof. We're not one of those extreme circumstances. We're a networking group for a software company. All of that, it makes it really hard for Jeff and I to navigate. Balancing, complementing the points on the left with all of that is finding a willing sponsor, someone that is either willing to travel to Kansas City, pay for a site because there's a very real chance we wouldn't be able to find a free site. Somebody finding a sponsor that is willing to take on that risk along with us to make it happen. Finding a willing speaker who's willing to present in person because virtual may not be an option. Coordinating the timing with Jeff and I, the site, the speaker, the sponsor. We had a hard enough time before the pandemic getting all of those to align. It cost us many hours, and we don't get paid for this. We're volunteering. When you then throw on any kind of actual pandemic restrictions, it makes it a lot harder. Estimating the actual attendance against yes and maybe RSVPs. When we were in person pre-pandemic, we saw 65% ballpark of our yes and maybe RSVPs. That has a direct impact on how much food we order and what size of a space that we need. And chances are, if someone either doesn't feel comfortable or isn't able, our numbers of yeses and maybes may go down as the denominator. If we're tasked with trying to figure out how to host in person and do a live stream, which is going to come at a cost, not free, because you don't just turn on YouTube or turn on Zoom and hope for the best. Zoom failed us a number of times because of, again, Wi-Fi and streaming capabilities. Zoom's Wi-Fi was spotty at best because it wasn't built to handle 60 people hammering it at one time. We would really have to think about how to make all of that happen. And if we say we're hosting on site and then someone decides, nope, I'm going to do it virtually, that's your prerogative. But a sponsor has already foot the bill for lunch. We've already potentially had to foot the bill for a site and figuring out spacing, going back to adequate sanitization stations. We'd have to pay for those. We'd have to keep those stocked, any number of those things. And then set up day of and clean up after. Again, there's a lot that we didn't share about our user group leader experience, but at Mazuma, those doors didn't open until 9 in the morning. We couldn't even get in. Jeff and I were then there hustling in at 9:01, getting the tables and the chairs set up because Mazuma didn't have any obligation to us to have it set up for us. So we were in there at 9, not working our day jobs, getting everything set up, waiting for pizza to show up, hoping people showed up, making sure the front desk knew where to send people. Then we had the meeting, and then there was the cleanup after. For the most part, y'all did awesome in terms of throwing your stuff away. If you had to leave early, you still cleaned up. We didn't have a whole lot that we ever had to clean up, but we still had to clean up. when all was said and done, we gave 6 hours to about a 2.5 hour meeting. And that's a lot to energy wise budget for, after having gone through all of this to even coordinate it, not necessarily knowing how many people were going to show up, now wondering how can we even do this legally and ethically. So I'm going to take a really big risk here. Jeff, do you have anything to say before I unleash the unmute button on the crowd?
No, I think all I want to say is, first of all, Dale, I appreciate you putting these together. I think we wanted to share, probably overshare where we were coming from, because, this is a group for all of you, right? For all of us. And I think we wanted to acknowledge the survey results. And I think it's awesome that there's, optimism around returning to in-person meetings. There's excitement, enthusiasm around returning to in-person meetings. And I don't think either Dale or I would say that we don't want to return to in-person meetings, right? I think if we could, snap our fingers, we would do it. There's nothing better than being in the same room with folks, and the types of conversations that you get, the hallway conversations, the break conversations, you just don't get on Zoom, right? We all acknowledge that. But I think we wanted to share where we were coming from and all the things that maybe are underlying factors that we haven't really talked about before, as we sort of look at what we want to do next as a group. So thanks for listening, and thanks for understanding, I guess is what I want to say. And I'm excited to get feedback, from the team. This was a really long setup to try to get some feedback from the team about what your thoughts are, and I'll turn it back over to you, Dale, to sort of open the floodgates.
Should be able for people to unmute themselves if we just take like 2 or 3 minutes, because then we do need to transition over to Steve. But I mean, does anybody else have any thoughts that are appropriate for a recorded line? And it's totally okay if you don't.
I really appreciate you guys taking the time to share what goes into planning a meeting and hosting an in-person meeting. And just to have the visibility into how much work you guys do, I really appreciate all your effort, whether it be virtual or in person.
Thank you. The biggest thing that Jeff and I have wanted to get out of any of this is that hopefully it helps people, hopefully it connects people, and whatever that needs to look like, we'll figure out how to make happen. We just want to make sure that people find value in it. So thank you.
Yeah, Dale and I really went back and forth about how much of this we wanted to share, how much of this we wanted to talk about, how much of the meeting we wanted to spend on this. The last thing that we wanted, we enjoy doing this. I think it's really important to hit home that, like, this is not to complain or make anyone feel guilty or anything like that, right? It's I think owning up to the reality of the time we're in, which is while most of us, per the survey, are ready and willing to go back, there's just so many additional variables introduced into what was already a complex process, right? And
it's not easy. It's not an easy topic. It's not an easy topic is what I want to say. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's all about, like, trying to, God, this sounds so cheesy, but, like, do what's best for the greater good, right? And, like, even just on the surface, before we get to all of this stuff, right? The survey, we had 40 something responses, right, Dale? And even in that small sample size was only 2/3 unabashedly yes, right? And so even if I think about it before we get into any of these details, right? Like if I have to make a choice, you know, between being able to do a virtual meeting that can theoretically serve everyone, or do an in-person meeting that I know at best is only going to serve 66% of the group, you know, I think we have to go with everyone for now. And maybe, you know, as time goes on, it'll be easier for us to provide the kind of, this whole process has really made me feel for people in HR at companies going through the same thing, right? But at a much larger scale, because everyone wants both, right? They want best of both worlds. They want to be able to come in and grab pizza and hang out with people if they want to, but then they also want to be able to do something virtually if they don't want to do that on a given day, and they want to be able to change their mind last minute. And just candidly, we're not technologically prepared to support that, you know? And if we were, that would be awesome. You know, if we could consistently live stream every single event, and provide a dual approach, I think that's what we prefer to do, but we haven't gotten any sort of support from Salesforce to do that. Not to like throw them under the bus, but you know, that's not been something they've been focusing on. And so it's kind of just been on us to try to figure that out, and we don't have the tools to do that.
Right. I mean, Salesforce is a great example. Dreamforce being invite only, 5,000 people. I can't even imagine the logistical hoops and everything that they have and will have to go through to do what they can for in person, to then also make it available to everybody else. Because I love math, not overly awesome at it, but 5,000 is a small piece of the pie compared to the 170,000 that they were getting. We were a group of a couple hundred members, you know, active or dormant. We get 50 per group. We're nowhere near the problems they have to answer, but we're kind of parallel to it.
Yeah. Well, I guess let's give like 30 seconds of dead air if people want to jump in and add any other comments. Otherwise, really appreciate you allowing us to take up a chunk of this meeting to talk about this. You know, obviously, if you're not comfortable sharing your feedback now, you know, Dale shared the email address earlier. Of course, there's a community page if you want something with a little more interaction and engagement from the rest of the community. Please don't hesitate to share your thoughts, because we're in this together. And, you know, we're just trying to make the best decision with the information that we have. But if you want to provide us with more information or more commentary, we'd love to hear it.
Yep, absolutely.
Otherwise, though, we want to make sure we get to the good stuff that you came here for.
This is my first meeting, but I just wanted to hop on and thank you. I just wanted to say that it's really wonderful seeing the apparent care and transparency you both have for everything about the group, from the safety to the enjoyment of the members. And thank you for sharing all of that, from survey answers in depth to your thought process to how you got to the conclusions you got to. I think that really speaks to the quality of the community and the attention that you guys put into the group.
Awesome. Thank you, Maddie, and welcome. Hope we see you at many more meetings in the future, whatever they look like.
Yeah. All right, let's get to DataGroomr. I'm excited to learn.
Yeah, let's get to the good stuff. Oh, I missed one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, next couple of meetings are likely virtual. I think we covered everything. So
yeah.
Yes, let's move on to the super good stuff, which I then forgot to slide the slide up. So I'm gonna try this one more time, and if I fail, I will never try again. Steve Pogrebivsky.
That's perfect, Dale. Thank you.
That's
Go me. Steve from DataGroomr is again our sponsor, and we're thankful for you sponsoring and looking forward to throwing the names of the opt-ins into the randomizer to see who won the gift cards. But Steve is here to present moving at the speed of machine learning, how AI is transforming deduplication in Salesforce. And then right after Steve, we'll have Corinne Walker as a return presenter with Excelling through Excel, which I love the idea of this as the auxiliary tool bench for Salesforce admins. And sneak peek, in September, we're going to have a similar presentation on additional tools. So I can say no more beyond that, but it's an awesome space for admins to be thinking about. So, but first, Steve, I will go ahead and stop sharing and let you take it away, sir.
Okay, thank you. Let me go ahead and start sharing. Hopefully you can see my first slide. Is that correct?
We still see just you.
Oh, well, that's because I didn't press the share button, but
Gotta love Zoom.
you know,
That'll do it.
how about now? You should see the slide, right?
Yep, all
do.
good.
All right. So yeah, as Dale said, my name is Steve Pogrebivsky. I'm lucky enough to have 2 grown daughters who hopefully will get rid of my last name in the future. Anyway, so the other some background information on me. I'm based in Philadelphia, and because of that, I feel a close kinship with Kansas City because we sent our football coach to Kansas City, and he promptly won a Super Bowl and probably will win a couple more. So I feel like every time they're on, I root for them. Other than that, I've never been in Kansas City, but I do hope to do it at some point. So a little bit of background on me, but we're here to talk about our products. So DataGroomr is a company that started fairly recently. We're about 3.5 years old. And what we had done is based on some previous experiences in our Salesforce journey, where we had to do quite a bit of deduplication. We decided that the current methods weren't really effective, and we came up with some other ideas. So our ideas are based on artificial intelligence and machine learning, and that's what I'm going to give you quick background on that, vis-a-vis what you can get in Salesforce or through some third-party apps today, and then give you a quick overview of the product. It'll take me longer than I have to cover the full product, so I'll just try to give you some highlights. And if anybody needs some more information or some additional demos, I'm leaving my contact information on these slides, or you can just go to datagroomr.com and see it there. So it's kind of a background information. So the current situation, these are some numbers that come from a variety of different sources, but we hinge our product based on this. This is a universal problem, especially in the Salesforce space. So 67% of businesses rely on CRM data to segment and target customers. 33% of businesses have over 100,000 records. Incidentally, out of our customer base, that's actually fairly accurate. We have some that are in millions of records, some that are 50, 60,000. But in general, this is correct. We noticed that orgs double every 12 to 18 months. That may be extreme, but we do see them growing pretty quickly. But the most important thing is essentially, like from what even from our conversation with customers, a great majority of your leads and contacts have bad data, whether it's outdated or essentially people have entered incorrect information or just overwritten required fields with some information. It tends to be faulty. However, that's a big problem because essentially marketing and sales is driven by how accurate that information is. And we feel that, in terms of data hygiene and data deduplication, there's ways to resolve these problems, or at least mitigate them to some extent. So a little bit about options in data cleansing today, what you have. So the first option is basically a qualitative approach, which is a rule-based approach. And if you've ever tried to deduplicate directly in Salesforce, you're familiar with this little image I have on the right. essentially create a rule. So you give it a name, then you select a bunch of fields. In this case, I select the company email, phone, and mobile. You give it a matching method. So for company, we use something called fuzzy, which means something similar will match. Email address, phone numbers, and mobile phone will have to be exact. And then on the bottom, we create sort of logic. So if the company is a close match and then the phone number is a match, then we say, well, that's a duplicate. The same thing for company and mobile or cell number. And finally, if the emails are identical, then we assume it's a match. So this is sort of a standard way. It will pick up quite a few of your basic duplicates, but it's also going to miss a lot. So the other option is sort of a quantitative method, and quantitative method uses statistics. So it looks at data and compares one record to another and tries to find similarities in it. So if you look at this image above, that this has a bunch of records in them, and as you can see, P1, P2, and P5 have similarities, whether it's name, zip code, or income level, and you can assign some level of similarity, totally arbitrary, but and then you create sort of an idea that these are the same, and as you can see, you can combine these into one record once you clean it. If you look at P3 and P4, they're identical. Obviously, very easy to assume that those are the same. And this is a standalone record. So this, again, uses a little bit more statistical method, quite simplified. This is not what really happens in real life. But as you can see, it's a different type of analysis that happens. So deduplication in Salesforce. So there's two options. The first one is sort of a standard one that you get in Salesforce, and third-party providers as well do this. And the one on the right-hand side, which is AI machine learning approach, is the one we use. So the pros of rules-based approach is, number one, you can create essentially unlimited number of rules. That also is a con, because you need to maintain and keep adding these rules as you find more and more duplicates. You can also support just about any object. So you can create a rule for any object in Salesforce and try to find duplicates. But as I said, it's nearly impossible to meet every single record, every single condition for a duplicate. We ran into this problem in a couple of my scenarios where I was trying to clean database, a Salesforce database, and essentially duplicates were coming in faster than we could identify them, and we had to keep modifying the rules. The other thing is that ideally, if you really want to do a good job, an effective job of finding duplicates with rules, you need to either normalize or both, normalize and standardize your data, so that things like abbreviations are taken into account, phone numbers look alike, email addresses sort of resembles what they should be. So there's a level of standardization that needs to happen for a rule-based approach. So a lot of legwork to make this work. AI machine learning is quite different. So there's really no need to create or maintain rules. So we, for example, give you rules for leads, contacts, and accounts out of the box. If you want to create for custom object, you need to train a model, but that's 10 to 20 minute process. And after that model is created, there's essentially no maintenance that happens. The algorithm improves over time. So as you deduplicate, there's a feedback loop that improves the algorithm and tunes it, makes it better over time. So it essentially happens as a natural act of what you do. Again, you can support any object. And the other thing is it's pretty efficient with large data sets. So rules tend to, rule-based approach tends to work well with small data sets. And as you get more data set, as more and more data, it becomes less effective, more time consuming, whereas machine learning can be tuned to be very effective with large data set. And the most important thing, there's no normalization or standardization that is required, because machine learning looks at records holistically. So it looks at them as an entirety rather than looking at specific or one or two or three fields. So what is machine learning in general? So machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. And it basically, the whole idea is that it teaches a computer to think the way you do. So you train a model. It basically identifies patterns the way that you identify patterns and converts them to a mathematical model. And you can essentially use that to identify, in our case, duplicates in the future with little or no human intervention. And again, if there is some human intervention, the model can learn and improve automatically. There's no, you don't need to come in and change things. You don't need to manage the rules in any way. It will just improve automatically. Another thing about machine learning is obviously whenever you have a computer involved, it's going to be more effective. It's just, people get tired, they miss certain patterns. Whereas a computer, basically, as long as you teach it properly and you give it, a pattern to follow, it will repeat it every time, not overlook anything that a human being might overlook. However, machine learning is not without its challenging. So there are three basic challenges when you implement machine learning, especially in Salesforce. The first one is, how can a machine know that two names are similar? It's not obvious. Obviously, as a human, when a human being looks at something, they say, "Oh yeah, these are the same." But a computer needs some guidance about it. So that's the first challenge. The second is, in Salesforce, every object has many fields, and you have to tell that object which fields are important to you. So not all the fields should be analyzed. Not all the fields are used. And so there's a process of that, identifying which attributes are more important than others. Finally, the third challenge is, how do you deal with lots of data? So I'll show you a little example here, but essentially, if you do a one-by-one comparison, that can become overwhelming no matter what the size of your computer or computer processing power that you have. So let's look at how do you know that two strings are similar in our case. So the first way is string similarity. So what that string similarity is, basically there's several algorithms that you could use. Some of the more common ones, again, I don't know if this is too techy, but there's something called the Hamming distance and another one called Levenshtein distance, which basically count the number of steps that you need to transform one word to another. So if we look at example here, to transform Stephen to Stephen, you have to remove the P and H and replace it with a V. So that would be a 3-step process. To replace Stephen with Steve, you basically just need to get rid of an N, and that's only a 1-step process. So based on that, it will determine a model for when two strings are considered similar. The second thing is a set similarity. So basically, a set similarity looks at a bunch of words together, how they're clusters, and if enough of them are similar, it makes a determination or gives it a score that says that these two are similar. No political alignment here, but as you can see, there's several different ways to go with Joe Biden, and I think based on the word smithing there, you can see that there is a similarity between these, and you can determine they're the same person. Finally, semantic similarity. So semantic similarity looks at also sort of at clusters, but it looks for a bunch of different things, how far they are away from other words, and again, assigns them sort of a score. As you can see in this example, we don't know that Maggie and Margaret are the same person, but we can say, well, Margaret is a Salesforce admin at Ajax, and Maggie works with Salesforce at Ajax Corp. You can probably make an alignment there that they are similar in some way, and that is an algorithm that could determine that. So the second part is, how do you know which fields are more or less important? So there's a process for that. So the process for that is that you start off with either trained data, so data that has been identified as being, in our case, for example, we look at groups of data and see if they're duplicates or not. So if they've been labeled duplicates, then that's pre-trained data. If you do not have pre-trained data, obviously you need a human being involved. So a human being will look at a data and say, yes, it's duplicates, or no, it's not duplicate. You feed that into an algorithm and you come up with you feed that into a model and you come up with an algorithm. So basically you've trained the data, and we've, based on a bunch of techniques, we created a machine learning algorithm. And then you can test it. You can input data into it, make a prediction whether something is a duplicate or not. A human being can evaluate it, and if the results are not efficient, you can rerun the process again. The second part of that is what's called active learning. So after a machine learning algorithm is created, you can present data that's been essentially has a prediction on it, and a human being can say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree. And I'll show you in our product how we do that actually. But what this will do, active learning, will actually improve the algorithm over time. So the last step is, how do you deal with large data? So in a simple example like this, so if you start with some object that has 50,000 records, and let's say you want to import 5,000, small amount of records into it. In essence, if you compare one record to every other record, that's 250 million comparisons. So no matter what you do, that's a lot of work for a computer. So the way that that's handled by AI and machine learning in particular is called a blocking approach. There's different ways of doing blocking in this way, but essentially you look at a trait of the data, and if they share some common trait, then you can say that these records have a similarity, and therefore you'll just analyze them for duplicates rather than every other record. So in this case, I just showed you a little example where you have Jay Leno, Jay-Z, and Jason Tatum. And you can see all of them, their first names start with J, J-A-Y. So you can assume that those are the same. So again, what are the benefits of machine learning? Essentially, it's simple, and you'll see that from our demo. There's not much to do. Once you have it set up, it's just, it just basically reanalyzes all your data, shows you the duplicates, and then you have to decide, yes, they are duplicates, or no, they're not duplicates. It's efficient. I mean, it's pretty fast. It will improve itself over time. So there's very little human interaction that has to happen once you have something set up. And the whole point of this is that it eliminates sort of a mundane task that would otherwise require somebody with a fairly strong skill set and understanding of your business, and it replaces that with a computer. And finally, it's accurate. Again, these things don't make mistakes. They once you train it properly, it's going to find things that you may otherwise miss. So there's a peace of mind to doing that. So that's kind of a preview of the slides. I'm going to try to switch the demo because I only have 40 minutes. So let me go ahead and do that for you. So hopefully you can see my browser page. The way that you access our application, you can install it from AppExchange in your Salesforce environment. You can go to our website and just press free trial, and it will switch you to this app.datagroomr.com, or you can just go to app.datagroomr.com, and then you log in. So we give you an ability to either log in with your normal Salesforce credential to your production environment, or if you feel more comfortable, you can log into the sandbox. So regardless of which one you choose, we will not do any merging or change your org in any way. The only thing we will do initially is do an analysis. So I'm going to log into Salesforce. We use Salesforce authentication, so I'm sure you're all familiar with this screen. So have this dummy account that I use, and that's the last time you'll pretty much see Salesforce for the rest of this demo. What you will see when you log in is probably not exactly this. You see this because this is more, I've been using this for a while, but what you will probably see is this little rotation here. So as I mentioned earlier, we will evaluate leads, contacts, and accounts because we already have models for them. We've pre-created that. And the models are crowdsourced over time, so they constantly improve. Depending on how much data you have, we will probably be more efficient than any model you could possibly create yourself, but there are some exceptions to that. But in any case, so when this is done, you will see information in these slides. This kind of gives you, these widgets, this kind of gives you a snapshot of how many duplicates you currently have. This gives you history over time. And as you merge or convert, this chart will be modified as well. Again, this is more for informational purposes. The real work kind of happens here on the left-hand side. The first thing, we have a couple modules that are really important. Trimmer is the module that does deduplication in Salesforce. So for your data that's already in Salesforce, Trimmer will look for that data and tell you which duplicates you have. Importer down here, by the way, we use barbershop metaphor. So trimmer works, brusher works, importer doesn't work, but you have to go with what works, what's really appropriate. So importer will analyze your data. If you ever do a CSV import into Salesforce, it will analyze that data for duplicates before you import it to Salesforce. And if you decide you do want to import it, you can do it through us or through data loader or any other third source. So let me start with Trimmer. So if I click on Trimmer itself, you'll see a little dashboard here as well. Each one of these, we call them data sets, but they are basically represents data that we extracted from each one of the objects. You can create your own data sets. There's many reasons to do that. To do that, basically, you select the name of the data set, or I'm sorry, you give it a name, select which object you want to source, fill out this other information here, which fields to display, if you want to apply any filters. Merge rules and matching rules, I'm going to talk a little bit about them down the road, but merge rules, you can specify, you can customize how records are merged. And matching rules is a misnomer, but it lets you to create your own machine learning models. And you can pick different ones if you don't like the ones we created here. The other data set option is we can do cross objects. So you can compare, let's say, leads to contacts, leads to accounts. So if you're looking for duplicates across objects, you can do that with this one. So let me jump in. So contacts here, you can see we found 15 duplicate groups. The way we represent them here is we bunch them together based on these, what we call match groups. We give each one a match confidence, which is between 1 and 100 on how sure we are those are duplicates. And we show you how many records there are in each group. You can preview it. This kind of shows you a quick preview, but if you really want to work with it, you press this review button. So what you see is the 3 records with a bunch of fields. The first thing is you can see we chose the master record. The master record is the one that will survive after you do the merge, and the other 2 will be removed. You can, if you don't like the master record we chose, you can click on it and select any other one and they'll just flip sides. The other thing, the items in red are differences between what's in the master record and another one. So for example, if the spelling of Jeff is incorrect and you want to use this, you can just click on it and it will copy it over to the master record, or click on it again to undo it. You can also edit data. So if you want to edit a line, for example, just add a suite here, you can go ahead and do that. And just about any other changes that you want to make. We support drop-down boxes, check boxes, everything will appear here. Once you're done with this, you basically have 2 core options. So merge and unmatch. So merge will obviously merge these 3 objects and create one of them out of them. Unmatch is telling us that these are not duplicates. You made a mistake. When I said that there's feedback, this is the feedback. So every time you press this, you're tweaking the algorithm. It will continue constantly improving based on these 2 buttons that you press. There's basically 2 other buttons. You can go to next group or cancel as well, but essentially this is how you do a manual merge. So 1 group at a time. So this works well if you have 9 or 15 groups, but if you have 1,000 or more, this kind of becomes difficult to do. So we do offer a mass merge option. Mass merge option, basically you select the match confidence that you feel comfortable doing a mass merge with. Select your master record selection rule, which is again the 2 rules for merging, field value rules, which I'll cover. Again, I'll cover both of these in a minute. Press merge all and the system will just go and do the merge automatically for you. We do have a scheduler module, which just allows you to create jobs, and one of the jobs you can create is a mass merge job. So you can select an action here. You can select which data set, so you can mass merge multiple data sets. Let's say if I just want to do accounts and leads, again, select the match confidence, press next, and you can pick a time when you want this to happen. So let's say I want this to happen tomorrow at midnight, and you can also do a scheduling thing. So you can, if you want this to run every week, you can go ahead and do that, or every day. So this will essentially do a merge automatically without any user involvement moving forward. So that's about it for deduplication inside Salesforce. Again, so we offer this other module called Importer. For what we found is a lot of companies, organizations do imports into their Salesforce. So this works very straightforward. It allows you to import data directly into Salesforce. So I have a file, a CSV file called import with dupes. I called it with dupes, otherwise I'll forget about it. But and this import is going to go into my leads. Press next. We will automatically map all the fields for you. If there's any fields that we can't map, you can go ahead and overwrite them. Press next, press confirm, and the system will start analyzing this CSV file for dupes. We're not importing anything into Salesforce. We're just looking for duplicates. This takes I don't know, maybe 40 seconds or so. As you can see, it's already moving. I already did this before just to shorten the time. Once we do the analysis, we drop data, we drop your records into 3 buckets. Unmatched records, which means no duplicates found at all. Match records means we did find duplicates, and imported records, if you do import them, they'll be dropped into here. Any records that do not have match can be imported en masse, or can be imported one at a time. It's up to you. Or you can, of course, you can always export. We allow you to export both your matched records, your unmatched records, and also the ones that are imported into Salesforce. If you do export them, you can feed it into another system like DataLoader and import them there. One interesting thing here is that for matched records, we actually do allow you to preserve some of the data. So for example, if this was a match that was found, if you press the review button, you'll see this is your Salesforce record, this is your CSV data. As you can see, Claire has now become a customer service manager. And rather than just completely lose this data because it's a duplicate, you can click on it, it will be moved over to Salesforce. And if you press update, it will actually update the record in Salesforce. So it's a nice way of not losing information that may be newer or cleaner, or one way or another represents your system a little bit better than what's currently in there. So that's importer. Let me switch to supervisor. So supervisor, the 2 main things I really want to cover are these matching rules and merge rules. Merge rules, again, so these are rules that tell the system what to do when you press merge. So the first rule is basically, we give you this rule, this rule out of the box. And it basically says, so it tells us how to select the master record. To create a rule, so we give you this little graphical UI for designing rules, so there's no real code to write or anything like that. We have these little tabs on the right, so with scenarios, so scenarios are common use cases. And for example, if you like one of our scenarios, you can just drag it and drop it in here and then get rid of the other one if you don't like. But in essence, this is just a UI designer for you so that you don't have to do this by hand. If you down here, we give you a little preview. So what will happen if this rule executes? So as you can see, this rule basically, actually select by score. So this rule says, well, whatever the score is, sort them in descending order and set the master to the highest one, which works great. As you can see, these 2 records both have a 92 score. The problem is since they both have a 92 score, it will arbitrarily pick a master. So if you do want to add additional logic, let's say, for example, I also want to use annual revenue to decide which one. So you can add that as an object here and then go to functions and then say, then sort by, and you can see it already pre-filled annual revenue, but you can select any one you want. And you can do descending, and you can see it will first sort by score, but then it will sort by annual revenue. So that's sort of a simple way to create a quick rule to select your master record automatically. Another thing you can actually, so the field value rules tell the system how you want to populate your surviving record. By default, we have this fill empty fields, which is exactly the same rule that Salesforce uses. And basically it says whenever you see an empty field, fill it with the value from the most recently modified record, if it has a value. So again, basic rule, you get it automatically, but you can create just about anything. So here's one I created for a demo. And this rule, not a practical rule, but it does a lot of interesting things. So for example, for company, we say, well, I want to keep all the values. So join them, concatenate them together with separated by a semicolon. And if you look at the result, you can see that it took all these words here and put them into one field and separate them by a semicolon. This is interesting, but for example, for fields with numbers like annual revenue, we can select the highest, obviously the lowest, but we can also do math. So we can do an average or we can do a sum. In essence, there's no real limitations here. You can just create rules that are just about do everything you can think of, but gives you an idea of how complex you can get with this rule set. So that's for rules. The one other thing I'd really like to show you, and if I have time, I'll show you one more thing, is a matching rule. So again, as I said, matching rules is a misnomer. This is machine learning models that you could create. So as you can see, I've been working with contacts and I already have 6 models that I created. So let me use that for the demo. If you want to add a new machine learning model, you press add model. You can give it a name. So let's say I want to call this one test. And then as I mentioned to you in one of the slides, you have to add which fields are important to you. So which fields you as a person would look at to find duplicates. So if you were looking records side by side, that's what you need to do here. You need to go ahead and select as many as you'd like here. I'm just selecting them arbitrarily. Once you have them all selected, you can press train. The other thing we have is we do allow you to load. If you already have deduplication rules in Salesforce, you can press load and it will show them here. Or if there's rules that we've created, you can press them here and it will load them in here as well. You can control which ones you see. So let's say you don't need title, you can exit. But basically this is the first step. It allows you, it tells us which fields are important to you when creating a model. Once you're done with this, you press train and the system will go off and start looking for duplicates based on the fields that you selected. It doesn't really know that criteria yet, but it will do its best. So this process may take anywhere from a couple minutes to as long as 20 minutes. You don't have to wait. Once it's finished, you will see the state of this model change to ready for training. And once it's ready for training, you can click on it and press open. And we will show you, I don't know if you noticed the little Pac-Man, but we will show you records that the system found side by side and ask you if they're duplicates. So this is the part where you as a human being are training the model. So we show you a duplicate, you say, are these duplicates? You can say yes, no, or not sure. And we will show you additional duplicates as you go along. And eventually, you can, once you fill this line at the bottom with enough yeses or nos, you press finish. And when you press finish, we will create a model for you. And once you have a model, you can assign that model to any appropriate data set that you may have in the system. So you can, like in this case, I want to select it here and you can go ahead and assign it. And you can also edit any of the data sets inside the data set as well. That's all it takes to create a machine learning model in DataGroomr. Dale, how am I doing on time? Or Jeff?
So if you want to do your one more, yep.
Okay.
And then we can do a couple Q&A and we're good.
Cool. So about 3 weeks ago, we released this Brusher module, which we've been working for a good part of a year. Brusher takes a little bit of a different look at data. So we look at data. This is from a data hygiene standpoint. So what we're doing is you create a data set, any filters you want, and we analyze it using a type of machine learning called the neural network for quality. So we look at data, see how high the quality is. And you can see we assign a data quality score, which can go from 0 to 100. The other thing you can do here is we give you an ability to verify certain information. So currently we verify phone numbers, emails, and shortly we'll also verify addresses. So if you want to just verify a phone number, you can just click on it. It does require credits, but right now it's in beta, so we give you the credits for free. And they will go through and look to see if that number is valid. If it's invalid, then it'll put invalid. If it's valid, you can go, it'll change it to green, something like this. Same thing for emails. So press confirm, and it will, obviously this is an invalid email. We also have an interesting functionality in here. If we identify an email address as invalid, we can actually sometimes give you a suggestion on what that email should be based on the patterns that are used inside this. We will test other patterns that are more common, and we'll give you a suggestion on what a valid email can be. So this can really help you clean out your data prior to it being used by either your marketing or sales team. Some other things that are available here, you can obviously mass verify, so we allow you to do all these verifications really quickly. We do allow you to do normalization and standardizations here. So that's a transform. So if you want to standardize things like uppercase, lowercase, street names, phone numbers, essentially there's rules that you can create or rules that would give you out of the box. You can just run a transform on this and it will transform all your data and standardize it or normalize it, depending on what you want. And we also give you an option to delete. So you can mass delete based on a bunch of different things, including the data quality score, which is the score here. You can also, obviously, if you create a filter in Salesforce and create a data set, you can delete everything inside that. So Brusher is something that's still in development, and we welcome people to use it and give us feedback. But this is something that the idea is this is more a data hygiene component rather than a data deduplication. I think that's it. I am just going to put my slide back up with my contact information. And Jeff, if there's any questions I can answer, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, so the big question is, I think, always the question that comes up when it comes to duplicate management. How does it handle related records? So when you merge a relationship, what does it do with the related records that are connected to those disparate relationships?
Yeah, so we automatically will merge those relationships. So if you're, for example, if you have contacts that relate to multiple accounts and we merge those accounts, we will all automatically merge that contact into the surviving account, and basically do that vice versa for any other record. So if there's relationships, we will support them, with maybe a few exceptions where Salesforce simply doesn't allow us to do that. But otherwise, we will resolve all the relationships as part of the merge automatically.
Is there any kind of pre-treating of those merged records that potentially create duplicates, or is it simply a merge into the surviving parent?
Yes. Well, pre-treating meaning what?
So like if company A has a contact named Dale Ziegler, company B has a contact named Dale Ziegler, you merge company A and company B, will it do any kind of treatment to then realize, oh, you have duplicate Dale Ziegler records, and be able to handle the like a formal contact merge as well?
Yeah, so it will not merge your contacts ahead of time or during that when it solves the relationship. It will basically attach the contact to your account, the surviving account. But you can go ahead and do, obviously that contact will be shown as a dupe in the contacts group, and you can merge it there if you want, or you can do that prior to the accounts.
Maybe you covered this, but any limits to the sizes of data sets that are evaluated?
There's no limits to data sets. We have one customer, which I think is quite unusual. They have 25 million leads. So, and we're able, now, I do want to say that if you have over 1 million of anything, of any object, that's when it makes sense to create a model that's trained on your data rather than crowdsourced. As I said, there's a few cases where you do want to create your own models. That the big advantage of your own model is that it'll be trained simply on your data, not everyone else's. So in that case, it'll become much more efficient, much faster in finding duplicates. The other thing that's asked quite often is when you do a side-by-side compare, is there a limit on the number of records you show? So the limit is 1,000. I have seen one that had 340 of the same, but that's as big as I've ever seen. So I think in general, 1,000 is enough. 25
million leads, one person in the outbound call center.
That's
Sounds
right.
like a recipe for success.
That's right. Exactly.
Matt,
travel company for Australia, in Australia. So
gotcha.
I guess a lot of people come
so
to
they
travel.
just have everyone in Australia?
I guess.
Matt posted in the chat, since there are multiple solutions in this space, what sets DataGroomr apart from the others? That's a phenomenal question.
Yeah, so again, our big take is just simply, it's the simplicity. So you can connect our solution to your org and we will find duplicates. There's nothing more for you to do. There's no rules to set up. There's no rules to maintain. We support essentially every other feature there is there, but it's the simplicity. You do not need, although it's good if you have a deep understanding of Salesforce, that's not required to use the product. And one phenomenon that we see a lot is that, generally somebody in sales ops sets this up, but they'll delegate the actual deduplication to other people who are not Salesforce savvy, but they may be savvy in terms of like who should be considered duplicate or not. So it's just making it much simpler to use is the key factor, and much easier to use and much easier to dedupe than you would with every other solution out there.
I have to say, since you started the demo, I've set it up in my sandbox and I'm deduping right now. So it's pretty lovely.
There you go. Testimonial right there. So
yeah, absolutely. I have been, I was skeptical about how well the scoring was going to, like how really accurate the scoring was going to be, but it's been, boy, it's been spot on. So it's been nice.
good, thank you. That wasn't, you should say, Jeff, that we didn't prepare this, so it wasn't.
No, we didn't. I mean,
it wasn't like one of those magician tricks, right?
Yeah. No, duplicate management is always really challenging, and one of the things that has always frustrated me about Salesforce's duplicate management approach is that unless you're on a particular edition, you don't get to run bulk duplicate management rules across your database, right? Like it's, I have to go click into a relationship to know that there's a duplicate. I mean, you can run reports and kind of, make it act as if you were running a database sort of search, but plugging something like this in that can just quickly scan the database and gin up results is super valuable, because I don't want to deal with the death by 1,000 paper cuts of my team pinging me every other day with something to merge. It'd be much nicer if we could do it in bulk. So.
Yep, exactly. There you go.
Well, I think also, the term AI feels like such a mountain to climb, and it keeps creeping closer and closer and closer to our Salesforce lives, our personal lives, and everything. And so I appreciate your demo. I appreciate your approach to it, because it definitely makes the mountain feel a lot less higher to climb, that you can empower admins and developers and resources who maybe, like me, don't fully understand AI, may never fully understand AI, but it's in the clicks realm. It's not custom, it's config. It's definitely a lot more attainable. So definitely a lot of appreciation for that.
Well, like you were saying, I feel like I could give this to somebody who doesn't know anything about Salesforce, and they would be able to process through these leads or accounts or whatever. And that just takes a ton of burden off of me, because I don't have time to manage the duplicates. So
Right.
Yeah. Awesome.
Great. I don't have to answer that many questions when you guys did. So it's great.
Yeah.
Well,
Big thanks, Steve. So is the best way for people to reach out to you via this email that's on screen?
Yeah, email, or again, we strongly encourage people, just like what you did, Jeff. Just go and trial it. I mean, once you connect, you kind of see the benefits. We're a low touch type of company. So, but if I'm happy to do demos, and we're happy to answer questions. So one other interesting thing is when somebody does purchase, we help them with onboarding, which generally requires us to help them create a rule or two, like either a merge rule or a matching rule. And we never hear from anybody after that. So, the system is pretty self-explanatory, and that's kind of our number one concept, is that, try it and you'll see. A lot of tools are really complicated. This is fairly straightforward.
Steve, I do want to ask one more question. I'm sorry. As somebody who's in the financial services space, obviously InfoSec is an important part of what we do. Remind me, is DataGroomr all native? In other words, does the data ever leave the platform? Is it being put out and processed by you in some way? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it's a great question, because we do have a lot of financial institutions. So unfortunately, Salesforce today does not have the AI capacity to do the analysis. So we do it using AWS. And just last week, I think AWS and Salesforce signed a partnership agreement. However, having said that, we do not ever store any of your data except the record ID. So when we analyze, when we find a group of records that match, we'll save the record ID so we don't have to reanalyze it every time. All the other data is retrieved on the fly, and as soon as you close it, it goes away. So, and all the authentication is done through Salesforce. So everything you use normally is what we use.
Excellent. What a great answer. Thanks.
No, it's a good question. That's asked quite a lot, and I've been through many InfoSec reviews with financial institutions, which take forever, but so far so good. So
Great deal. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Give you guys control back.
All righty. So now we are going to hand this over to Corinne Walker, who, if you were with us a few months ago, we love having return speakers. This time she is tapping into the power of Excel, which when she submitted her idea on the speaker interest form, which is out on the success group, if you want to fill it out, please, if you have a topic you want to present on. I had a very slight chuckle because 10 years ago when I started with Salesforce, it was, Excel is the database, and Salesforce looks like Excel with the columns and the rows. And it was kind of like, yeah, okay. What does Excel do? What should it do? Whatever. And I personally got into the mindset of Salesforce everything. And for a brief time, disregarded the value and importance of a tool like Excel to do a bunch of heavy lifting and do a lot of really cool things with your Salesforce data. So I am really excited that we have Corinne back to present Excelling with Excel, a Salesforce admin guide. Corinne, if you are ready, go ahead and present, and the floor is yours.
Hi, thanks, Dale. Hey everyone, I'm Corinne. You may have come to a previous Salesforce user group where I had presented. So I guess I'll go ahead and get started. Let's see, sharing my screen. One second, guys. Okay.
There we go.
Awesome, thanks. All right, so it's not a whole lot, and the majority of this presentation is going to be actually showing you guys in Excel, but ultimately what I wanted to do was kind of share a couple of tips and tricks on how I use Excel in my everyday life to make my admin life easier. Typically my philosophy is, if it's in Excel, it can be in Salesforce. I mean, what are you doing tracking things in Excel, right? But at the same time, it can be a really useful tool to manage your data and make sure that you have good data quality in Salesforce. So here's the agenda for today. I'll just be going over a little bit about myself, why even talk about data management, when should you have good data management, and then how. Of course, the how is going to be through Excel. So a little bit about me. Again, my name is Corinne. I'm the engineering manager for the Salesforce team here at C2FO. And ultimately, if you read a little bit about my bio, I'm just trying to get myself out there a little bit more. Just a disclaimer, I'm not an expert on anything or everything. I just want to share what I typically do. So if you have any Excel questions, I'm probably not the best person to come to, but I can just tell you what I know. I am 3-time certified Salesforce administrator, advanced administrator, and platform app builder. here is some contact info if you would like to know a little bit more about me or if you want to ask me any questions. And so let's go right into it, right? So why data management? Like, who cares about the data in Salesforce? Once it's in, people can take care of it, right? But it's in my personal opinion that if Salesforce is a magical beast, which it is, then data is the fuel by which it lives and breathes, right? So data is, what is the whole reason? Like, why are you even using Salesforce? You're trying to help people manage the data, manage information, manage processes and procedures that create the data for you. So data is kind of like food, right? You don't want to shove in junk food. You don't want to feed junk food and crap to your dragon or whatever your magical beast is. I promise you, it's not going to work. It's going to be unhealthy. It's going to be slow. It's people aren't going to like it. It's going to look ugly eventually. And so when you're managing your data, you want to make sure that all of the fields are the correct field type. If you have a lot of free-form text, or if you've got a lot of incorrect values, it's going to be hard for end users to work with. And so as part of a Salesforce admin, it's our jobs to maintain and manage that data, make sure it's clean, make sure if there's any fallouts due to automations or integrations that we take care of that, because we're taking care of this awesome animal here. So when is it that I'm talking about? Like, I know that there are some orgs, they don't have a lot of data, so it's very easy for someone to go in and click from record to record, pull a report and update fields either through a list view or just right within Salesforce as needed. But there's going to be also times, especially if you have a bigger org, where you're going to be either migrating data from an external database. For example, if you're migrating from one Salesforce org to another, you don't necessarily want to navigate in Salesforce, click create new, and have to recreate each record from an old org. And that's very similar to if you have a third-party platform, or as the DataGroomr, if you're needing help importing data, one way to do it is through an Excel spreadsheet. So when else would you want to perform good data management? In this example, it's maybe you're migrating a new process into Salesforce. Again, my philosophy is, if you're tracking information on a spreadsheet, why is that not yet in Salesforce, and what can we do to get it in there for you? And oftentimes people are like, yeah, that's a great idea. I can use a lot of the automations that Salesforce has to offer. The problem is I have all of this data in my spreadsheet. Historically, this is where I keep track of it all. How am I supposed to get all of that into Salesforce? And so that's part of an admin's job to see if we can migrate that in for them using Excel. So just a few other times that you would want to utilize Excel to mass manage your data would include uploading lists from a spreadsheet, or mass backfilling data. I just this morning got a request to mass update a whole bunch of accounts. It was, I think, 5,000 accounts, and they said you need to update the account status, and you also need to add in additional notes into this free text column. But the problem with that request is that we have our agents go in and manually add in notes. So if I were to take that file and just upload it right into Salesforce, all of a sudden I will be overwriting a whole bunch of notes on the free text field. And now I basically screwed it all up because I've lost a lot of information that's currently in our Salesforce org. So when you're uploading lists, you'll want to use Excel to make sure that you are comparing to what's currently in the system with what you're trying to upload. Same with mass backfilling data. And then the last, but not least, and certainly this isn't a comprehensive list, but it definitely, if you have some rogue automations or some integrations that aren't applicable or being applied correctly to your org, all of a sudden you can get a mass bad data in the org very suddenly all at one time, and therefore you'll have to go back in and clean that up. So I do propose that you do this with Excel. I don't propose you go in one by one, especially if you have 5,000 records. And the whole point of this presentation is just to give you the tips and tricks that I've learned and what I typically do to make that more efficient. So first, I'm going to go through hopefully 5 basic concepts that I use. First being setting up your Excel spreadsheet to make it more efficient for you. Everybody uses Excel in a different way. Everyone clicks, there's multiple ways to get to a button. There's multiple ways to set it up so that you are familiar with the Excel that you use to make your job go faster. So then I'll kind of go through sort and filter. Again, this is basic, but I hope to shed some light on, why would I use sort and filtering, or when would I use sorting versus when would I filter? Why would I use concatenate and trim? And then I think our best friend, honestly, is the VLOOKUP. And so that's just kind of a little bit more insight into when to use VLOOKUP, how to troubleshoot it, and why is it a big deal. And then lastly, my other best friend is pivot tables. And most people use this for analysis, but I just use it to, find distinct values, see which one has the most records beneath it. It's kind of like a drag and drop fun little tool to make things go a little bit faster, in my opinion. So yeah, I guess I'll just go ahead and hop right into it. First thing is how I set up my Excel. Let me just open it up right here and swing this over. Can everybody see my Excel? Okay, cool. Thanks. So my favorite part of setting up Excel is this little quick access toolbar. I don't use a whole lot, but what I do use, and very often, are directly up here. Sometimes when you're navigating around to all of these different ribbons, and then let me back up a bit. I am on a Windows PC. I am using Microsoft Office, and I believe this is, I don't know what version this is, but the latest version of Excel. So if you have any questions on that. But some people don't like using the expanded ribbon format. I'm personally a big fan of it. If I can get it back now. Do 1 second here. Yeah. So I enjoy having the ribbon here. I enjoy having kind of the formula bar being bigger, just because it's sometimes easier to type directly within the formula bar instead of into Excel itself. But anyways, for my quick access bar, I always have my little funnel, which is my filtering. I'm constantly saving things because I don't know how many times I've lost the work that I've done. And then my other best friend, which is the dedupe tool. Of course, you have to select some space and some data in order to dedupe. But in order to customize your little ribbon up here, just click this drop down arrow and click customize. You can put whatever commands you want directly into this little quick access bar. And the main reason why I like it is because I don't have to remember what tab is it under, what section of that tab is it under, and then it's just going to save you several clicks at the end of the day. So, there's my favorites. perhaps you are all into deleting cells or sheet columns or cutting things out or freezing panes. So again, it's all of the popular commands are here, or if you want, you know, all commands in general, that's a little bit overwhelming, but again, it's all here. Alrighty. And then let's see, I need to navigate back to common tools to access. So I kind of briefly touched over what I commonly use, and then keyboard shortcuts. And guys, I'm constantly learning about Excel every day, every single time I use it. It was just literally maybe 6 months ago that someone told me, oh, did you know that you can just shift and click on the cell that you want to select the whole thing? So yeah, that's a thing. And let me pull up a spreadsheet that actually has data in it so that I can show you what I'm talking about. Here we go. So I have an example list of email addresses. There's 2,000 of them. And, you know, here's all my different email addresses. They're pretty distinct. But for example, if I want to select all just, you know, 1,000 of the 2,000, I can select the entire row here. And then I can just go all the way down to my 1,000th row. And I'm going to press Shift on my keyboard and then select it, and boom, all of a sudden, I've selected all 1,000. Previous, back in my, back in the olden days, I literally dragged all the way down like this. And it's, you know, it's not too bad, but when you've got, you know, 150,000 rows that you have to select, it gets a little tedious. So again, you just, and you can do it just based on cells as well. So you click inside the cell, you go down to whichever one you want, and then Shift, and boom. And then if you want just certain ones to select, for example, I only want this one, I can Control and select a whole bunch of just random ones. Oh, my bad. If you roll your mouse, then it zooms in and out, so be careful about that. So again, this is just, I'm just pressing Control on my keyboard, and that is just selecting all the different random options. Well, purposefully, not random, because I'm purposefully selecting them. But that is how I go about being a little bit quicker on what information to select. Of course, if you click this little the arrow here, it selects the entire sheet. If you select a column, it selects the entire column. Row is the entire row. Another trick that I just inadvertently showed you is actually decreasing and increasing my zoom. Excuse me. Sometimes it actually helps to decrease your zoom, well, not that much, if you don't need to see the actual data in there, but you're actually trying to just grab a subset of data, or you're trying to grab the appropriate number of columns, right? And Shift. So zooming out a little bit actually can help you out with that. That's a trick that I learned not too long ago. And what, okay. So I'm sure that there's a lot of other tips and tricks regarding keyboard shortcuts. I can go on this for a little bit longer, but I really want to get into the meat in the potatoes, which is about the concatenate and VLOOKUP feature. But before I get to that, the question is, when do I sort? When do I filter? Why do I want to sort? Why do I want to filter? So I'm gonna go back into my example spreadsheet here. And here we are. So oftentimes when you get a request and it's things like, you know, Corinne, I need you to update all of these email addresses with their titles, but not all of the titles right now because we're doing a campaign, and I only need to know I only need you to update all the ones where the title has the word account in it, right? So what you can do is most people would sort, back in my day, I would sort actually, oh, I'm going really fast. So how I sort, if you select the entire sheet and you click the sort and filter, I have a habit of going to the custom sort because number one, I always check to make sure that my data has headers. Sometimes I get a spreadsheet and it doesn't have headers, and then you're just sorting weird things. So I always come here to one, make sure that I have my data checked headers, and then I'm going to sort by title, A to Z, and then I can just add more levels as things get more complex, but I'm just gonna go ahead and sort here. And that's going to give me, oh, why is my dedup on? Pardon 1 second here. Okay, so now I'm going to look and say, oh, well, this is easy because just a quick look at my titles, all of them that start with A have the word account in them. So that's super easy. I'm just going to take the first 259th, get rid of the rest, upload it, and things are amazing. And that's really how easy that is. Some people go back to the option of filtering, right? And the thing about filtering is, yes, you can filter, but it takes a lot of processing power for Excel. So in this example, if the request was to go ahead and just pull up and update any emails with the word account in the title, I can certainly do so. So then what do you do with this? I mean, now you're gonna have to probably copy it all, right? Paste it into, it's gonna be a whole other notebook because you can't have multiple tabs for an Excel spreadsheet and everything goes in as a CSV file. So you're going to have to create a whole new, you have to open up a new notebook, you're gonna have to paste it in, and that's fine too. Sometimes I get a little bit lazy about that, and then what I do is I say, all right, give me all the ones that doesn't contain the word account, and then I go in here, and then I have to go in again, dragging. That's my old ways. I'll show you the new and better ways. Go down here and go down here. Shift, and then now I'm having to delete these and then resaving it, and that's fine too. But again, when you have 150, 200,000, 300,000 rows in Excel,
hey Corinne,
yeah,
can you, I'm gonna blow your mind with that delete, that shift delete.
mm-hmm.
So click in row 2 there, on the row, yep, and then Control Shift down arrow.
Control Shift down. Oh my gosh, I can't even. I'm done.
It'll select everything. It'll select everything down to the end of your filtered list.
That's
so that way
perfect.
you can select all rows and then delete.
Yeah, I have to write that down. Thank you. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I'm no expert and I'm learning every day and I love it.
No, I love it. This is great. I just saved you some even more scrolling.
I know. And you can tell that I have like really old habits because I was like dragging and scrolling down, but that's perfect. Okay, so in my new presentation that I'm about to give, one tip is to, what is it? Control Shift
down.
Yes.
Yep.
And then delete.
Yeah.
So what was I saying? Oh yeah. So when you have, 300 or 400,000 rows and you're trying to delete all of the rows that you filtered out, it can crash your Excel. It can crash. But what I have found out is that if you simply sort and then filter, then things are much easier, things are much faster. So that's my advice to you, is to, if at all possible, sort first, then filter. All right, excellent. So moving on, we will then talk about, okay, what else want to fill? Conditional formatting. Okay, so one fun thing that you can also do is you can do a little bit of a conditional formatting. I like to use this anytime that I'm identifying duplicates, right? And Excel is really great at that because it gives you the option right here. For your conditional formatting, I'm going to highlight cells that are duplicate values. Super easy. Now, the thing about duplicate values is that it reads top down, right? So the very first duplicate that it finds, or in this example, it will read CEO as the unique value. And then every subsequent value that is also CEO, that's the one that it treats as the duplicate. And then so it's going to highlight both of them. And then as soon as you get rid of all the ones underneath the very first instance of it, then it'll turn white again. And sometimes when you're deduping or when you're managing your data, it's very nice to see the white instead of the pink and red. But what a great thing that you can do when you have your conditional formatting on there is that you can filter and sort based off of the color. Yeah, here we go. Sort by color. And you used to be able to filter by color. I don't know what's up with that. Maybe it's because they all are literally duplicates. So that could be an issue. Typically though, you can filter by color once you have your duplicate rules. And then if to take that off, just go back right here, clear your rules. You can clear it from the entire sheet or from the selected cells. Excellent. All right, concatenate and trim. So trimming is very, very simple. I use it because I get a lot of terribly formatted Excel files. They literally just throw it over the wall and assume that that's perfectly fine. And sometimes they're very well formatted, but they are for the business stakeholder and not for the admin. So first thing that I do is I clear the formats with this little handy dandy clear button. Clear formats, and you can see it literally puts everything in plain text, good to go. And then often what you will find is that because they're copying and pasting the info directly from Salesforce, or I don't know what, they're just randomly typing things in, they're going to have spaces in the front plus spaces in the back. And if you've got pickless values that are restricted, or you've got, if you want good data in your Salesforce org, you simply cannot have this. This is terrible. So trimming will remove those spaces, those invisible spaces, so that you don't have to do it yourself. And two, as if you have your Excel zoomed out or at the way that you want it, and you're like, man, my eyes are tired today, or I'm getting old, or I don't have my glasses on, you don't have to click into each one and figure out, does it have extra spaces? Why are there spaces at the end of this one and not at the end of this one? And then by the time you're done with your 11th row and you have 500,000 more to go, you're not going to want that. So that is what the trim feature does. It helps you to clean your file and prepare it for load. All right, and concatenate is a very interesting feature. Basically what it does is it just smushes everything together in one cell, whatever you want smushed together. I use it for doing a lot of SQL queries. For instance, in a SQL query, and I'll open up my workbench here to show you guys, but in a SQL query, if you guys ever use Workbench or even in Data Loader, there's that feature. But if I am doing a query and I want to identify, you know, I only want to pull information on this object for these specific IDs, and you can have up to, I believe, 100,000 characters before it errors out. So that I can tell you that's like at least 2,000 IDs. So I'm doing an in statement on my ID where the ID in one of these 2,000, and I could manually type that. I can say, you know, look for emails where where it contains 123@abc.com 1 and 123@abc.com 2, you know, comma, quote unquote, comma, quote unquote, and that's no fun either. So the concatenate function just puts all of that together for me. So in this case, I'm going to say, I'm going to give it a quote, because in the quote, I can write whatever I want, right? And then I can concatenate it with any of these cell values. So it literally says I can write whatever I want, 1, 2, 3, ABC. And then you click this little handy dandy plus sign, and it does it for the entire page, right? But anyway, so that I'm just showing you what the quote does, because I'm going to do a quote, single quote, and then I'm going to add more concatenate features to that. I'm going to do another comma. Yeah, sure. But I don't even think that's the right. Yeah, that's right. So now what you see is this is what the syntax looks like if you're going to do a SQL query. And then I can just literally copy all of this and paste it into my SQL query and get exactly the specific records that I want out of Salesforce to compare it with. Whether that's trying to find the ID, because I mean, that's the next question. They're going to be like, all right, Corinne, I need you to update this email address with this title. And I say, well, gosh, thanks for the email address. That doesn't help me at all. And so what I now have to do is I have to go in and perform a SQL query. And I have to say, all right, Salesforce, give me all of these records that contain these email addresses, not even contains, equals these email addresses, and then give me what the ID is. So I pull that report, and here's my report. I pulled it earlier, and I made up a whole bunch of IDs-ish. So here I go. Here's all of my IDs, and now I have to, what I can try to do is I can just say, well, I'm gonna sort my email addresses up to down, and it's going to be alphabetical, so I can almost guarantee that my ID is going to match exactly with the email address, almost, right? Of course, you're going to have, you may have some parity in Salesforce because maybe one of the contacts got deleted, or you've got duplicate email addresses, and now all of a sudden you have duplicate IDs. But long story short, that's where you use VLOOKUP to compare two different spreadsheets and ensure that what you're the data that you're pulling out of Salesforce and the data that you're pulling from the spreadsheet are, you can identify the IDs or whatever else field values that you need to identify. All right, just a step back though, when you are doing a formula, make sure that if you check the formula and you like the values that you see, highly recommend right-clicking, copying it, and pasting it as text. That way you don't lose your formula, or you don't lose the values, because the underlying data in your formula may change, whether you exit out of that spreadsheet that it's referencing, or you are doing something else. You want to make sure that the data that you receive is the data that's going to stay. So that's why you are pasting in text there. And now you've got a nice little, now I've got two spreadsheets that I need to pull over. So I can do one of two things. I can add the title here, or I can grab the ID and put it in here. Either one will work, but here I'm going to use my handy dandy friend, the VLOOKUP. All right. And basically what the VLOOKUP does is it takes the field that you want to look up, and it takes in a different table, whether that table is in the same spreadsheet, on the same tab itself, or on a different, in a completely different book like mine, you will be able to compare what you're looking for in one table to another table. So in this case, I'm going to try to find the title for this guy right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up, I want to look up this email address, and I want to find it in this table. Don't get mad at me that I'm dragging and dropping, or that I'm dragging and selecting, my bad habits. But here we are. As you can see, all of these tips and tricks, just incorporate one or two at a time, and once you get used to that, then you can, then you can skill up, right? So again, if I'm breaking this down, I'm looking at the first, in my sheet one, I'm looking at the cell on the first column, and I'm trying to match it between this range here, my A and my B in this spreadsheet. And then it's going to ask me, after that parameter, it's going to ask me what column am I supposed to find to return? And it's going to be my second column. Did I not do this right? I'm missing something here. So I'm looking up my first column to everything up here. I think we're almost out of time, right, guys?
Yeah, we're getting close. If you want to, head towards the finish, a big finish.
Right. Perfect, thanks. All right. So then here we go. I'm going to return the second column, which has my titles in it. And then it's going to ask you, do you want an approximate match, or do you want the exact match? And I always go with the exact match. And here we go. Proof that this first email, its title is CEO. And indeed, that's true. So just drag all the way down there, double click. And indeed, number 12 is a controller. And yes, there he is, a controller. All right. I don't have all of this in my handy dandy slides, but I can definitely add that in there. Just some additional details so that you have the notes. I know you guys are very good about taking notes on your own and very diligent about it. So I have no qualms about it, but I will also follow up with those additional notes as well. But that is, I'm sorry we didn't get to pivot tables, but maybe one day we can all
Yeah.
explain it together.
You can blow it out into a whole pivot table presentation next time.
That's true, I could. Don't give me that idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Well, hey, where do you, as we kind of wrap up here, where do you go when you're looking for resources? Like, what do you use to learn these tips and tricks? The good old Google machine, or?
Yeah, I certainly do. I certainly do. And sometimes when I'm in presentations or in meetings and somebody does something really cool and slick with Excel, I'd be sure to take note of that and see if I can apply that to my everyday life, as well as, you know, even if it's something that it doesn't look like would apply, I make note of that concept and I do a little bit of research to see, you know, what other functionality does that feature provide.
Awesome. Great feedback. Any questions for Corinne before we all say goodbye? I know some folks have dropped, but I want to give folks the opportunity to ask any questions. Awesome. Well, Corinne, thanks so much for taking the time to put this together. And per usual, we'll be posting the slides, and we'll be posting the slides both from DataGroomr and from Corinne in the community. And we'll be sharing the recording as soon as we can. And we will look forward to our next session together. Thanks again for your patience earlier today as we talked through the future of this group and what our meetings are going to look like. And I will once again encourage you to provide any feedback that you have via the email that Dale provided at the top of the call or via the community. So big thanks to Corinne. Thanks to everybody. And we'll talk again soon.
Bye.
Be well all. Thanks.